Bill Putch never gave me one bit of advice or criticism that wasn't absolutely the best advice and criticism in the world. And I didn't listen to most of it. George Hemme said, I see it backstage of a theater, and it should be brick flats. Well, then I looked at the picture, you know, the picture, the black and white picture from the time he'd done it before, because Bill had done everything before, at least once, some twice. And I said, oh, well, we don't want to do the same thing you've done before. Let me do this. And Bill would say to me, well, you're grandstanding this. You know, and he was very open-minded to things that were new. But he could spot a bad idea like that. You don't have to grandstand this, Rags, you know, get some help. And I'd look around and I'd see what the help was. The help was, you know, the help was equity waiver apprentices who didn't want to pick up a paintbrush and couldn't give a damn what the scenery looked like because they all wanted to be stars. It rained, I think, for a week and a half of the 3 weeks. And I just remember kind of going with my tail between my legs at one point after it opened, and I wasn't happy with the way anything looked, and half of it didn't ever make it to the stage, and the paint was wet on opening night. I remember saying to Bill, you know, you were right, it should have been brick flats and a few pieces that moved in and out. But it took that for me to learn that. And of course he was right. Anybody who was young had the same experience. Here was this guy that knew all this stuff, and we were determined to show him something new. There wasn't anything you could show Bill that was new because he'd been there already. I remember the curtain went up and the audience applauded, and I'd always been taught that should never happen. And I was very ashamed. I said, oh God, I failed because they're applauding the scenery. It's supposed to be in the background. And Bill said, no. I said, this is what this is about. It should be pretty. We're here to entertain them. We're not doing Death of a Salesman. We're doing Little Mary Sunshine. And I want the audience to enjoy what they see. And they went up and they applauded the set. Plus, it was kind of fun to watch the Mounties come down the aisle, and everybody got very excited about it. Little Mary Sunshine was wonderfully fun. Wonderful. I would be painting out and back, and the audience would come, and there'd be all this excitement, you know, people coming to see Gene, and they'd come to the theater, and they'd come out there in their nice cars and all dressed up, and I had just never really experienced this before. And they'd come in and they'd kind of sit and crowd the place. He'd come back and take the chair, literally, the chair out from under the girls trying to sew costumes for Little Mary Sunshine and make them stand up and sew because he wanted more chairs to sell tickets. And he'd put these in the aisle and pray that the fire marshal wouldn't show up to sell above capacity seating. And I would hear the show kind of vaguely through that little rinky-dink speaker system that they had, and you couldn't quite hear what was going on except you could hear those kinds of actors. And these gales of laughter would come, then it'd kind of die down. And then you'd hear more and more. And I had never, you know, I had worked in a certain amount of theater. I had never heard an audience respond like this. And after performance of this, I began to be able to set my watch to it. That when I'd heard, you know, get to a certain point, I knew there was going to be this gigantic laugh followed by just laugh after laugh after laugh. And it just kept rolling over the footlights, so I couldn't wait to see this play. So I went in there, and I remember it was this kind of balmy night, and the curtain went up on this little box set, this perfect little set that Paul had done. And all of a sudden, I just felt like I was on Broadway in 1925, or whenever that play was, about to watch this little show. The costumes were perfect. The acting was phenomenal. Bill had a knack for period detail. You felt like you were watching 1925 actors in a contemporary play rather than watching contemporary actors in a period play.